Hello, everyone, and welcome to ReImagine 2021, brought to you by Mousebell. I'm your co-host, Ashley Meredith, and today we're bringing you a very special event. It's our 10th anniversary. We've been bringing you virtual conferences and content and community for the last over a year now, while some of us have been stuck at home, and as the world has begun to opening up, having great conversations, and we're just so grateful for this following that we've built over the year and that we can be here bringing you all the latest news in crypto and blockchain. So thanks for tuning in. I'm really excited to introduce our next guest who really needs no introduction, Brock Pierce. Welcome, Brock. How are you doing today?
I'm glad to be back for your anniversary event.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us. It's a great full circle to have you here again on our 10th event. You were one of our first guests at our first ever event that, we kind of took this opportunity or this crisis and turned it into an opportunity. We wanted to reimagine how is the next year going to go? How can we still build community virtually and launch this conference? And we're just so thrilled that you were able to join us again and kind of tell us all about the changes and the wins for yourself and the crypto community over the last year. And for anyone who's just tuning in, definitely encourage you to head on over to our ReImagine 2020 YouTube channel, where you can find Brock's first interview. He did a great overview of all of the awesome projects that he's worked on in crypto. Smash that subscribe button, watch his old interview. So in your first interview with us, we were really encouraging you to talk to the newcomer or to students or people who wanted to build things in the space. And you really encouraged people to realize that they don't have to just continue whatever they're doing, that people get trapped in these patterns because it's safer and change is scary. So I just want to hear from you, how have you're the kind of person who's always evolving. How have you evolved over the last year and what are you working on now?
Wow. Yeah, this last year has been a very big one. Well, first of all, I turned 40 in this last year, which is a big marker, in any of our lives. And so what have I done in the last year? Well, I guess we could start with I ran for president of the United States of America.
For anyone who might have missed that.
Candidate. So that was obviously a great learning experience. Obviously, I didn't run last time with the intention of winning. It was an exploratory mission to understand the mechanics of the system, to understand how one could do that. And so I announced that presidential run on July 4th, an auspicious day for an independent candidate last year, and broke a lot of records, ballot access, lots of votes, fair amount of media when there was a real basically ban on anything that wasn't Democrat or Republican. And I'd say mission complete. Basic training done. And I've stayed very involved in, call it domestic and now international politics. The New York City Democratic primaries, as well as Republican, but focused primarily on the Democratic primaries, has been a big area of focus. Led the first formal delegation to El Salvador since the pandemic started, meaning we were the first group invited in by the government since COVID, which was interesting, and I'm happy to double click on that if you want to understand what's going on there. And internationally, I've gotten very involved in infrastructure development, whether it be airports, marinas, energy grids, or energy infrastructure. I do a lot of hospitality. I've bought a lot of hotels. When I talk about boats, I bought 2 cruise ships in the last year. You never know when you're going to need an ark. So lots of stuff continue to do in the areas of technology. So I've grown a lot, over the course of this last year, which has been an incredible opportunity in so many ways. One of the things that these COVID lockdowns have done, which I'm not a fan of, but one of the things that it's done is it has effectively untethered us from all of our habits, all of our patterns, and given us an opportunity to reevaluate our lives and to assess what is serving us and what is not. What practices do we want to leave behind? What practices do we want to double down on? And what new things, are we going to do, with this time that we've effectively been given back? And I hope for everyone tuning in, that you made good use of this time to get your house in order, figuratively and literally, because it's like that saying of, when given a lemon, you make lemonade. And so I hope everybody's got a nice glass of lemonade, and that you've really made use of this. And I also hope that things reopen. Now all of a sudden, like, lockdowns are happening again. Like, weren't we told, that, once these vaccines are out, the world will open up and, we'll go back to normal. And now all of a sudden they're saying everybody's got to put a mask back on, even if you have a vaccine. Oh, wait, we have to lock everything down. I don't know. I'm not an expert, but it makes me want to ask a lot of questions. It just makes me go, we were told, like, now was the time things would be reopening. Why is everything shutting back down again? What did we get wrong? What's going on here?
Absolutely. I've worked in public health in the past, and I see a lot of failed opportunities for good communication around all of the stuff that's going on. And I think it creates a real sense of distrust in the populace. And what I love about the blockchain industry is that we are so concerned with trust and being transparent and holding people accountable, or having the ability to, because of that transparency. So if anyone tunes into your last episode, they'll see, this transition from child actor to entrepreneur in the gaming space, to raising funds, to investing in blockchain companies, launching blockchain companies, exploring stable coins, ICOs. Would you say that this is your interest now, like in politics, infrastructure, international diplomacy, is that a natural progression of those things? Or do you think that, your 40th birthday and the COVID pandemic was a kind of a catalyst for that?
Well, I mean, my life has really kind of functioned in decades, right? From 0 to 10, grew up making commercials and modeling. At 10, I made my first movie, Mighty Ducks, and I was doing media. From acting to entrepreneurship. Then 20s was virtual currency and games. 30s was all of this crypto, blockchain, Bitcoin stuff. And I'm not going to get into any of the depth because it's in that prior episode. But yeah, chairman and Mastercoin, where we invented the ICO, co-founder of Blockchain Capital, the first venture fund in the space. We're on Fund 5, funding the Coinbases, the Krakens, all that sort of stuff. Co-founder of Tether, where we invented the stable coin, doing $60 trillion a year. Started the first crypto bank. BCAP, the first digital security token, obviously founding advisor and investor in T0 and others wise. The list goes on and on. A lot of stuff in this space. But my 40s, which is the next era of my life, is really focused on governance. And I mean beyond just blockchain. It's where governance and technology meets government. And that's clearly what I think this next decade of my life is about. And also, looking at how technology can be used as a tool for transformation, right? We have a lot of challenges right now in the world. Challenges also are opportunities, but we face a number of very real existential threats. And the good news is that innovation is the answer to most of our problems. And so I'm looking at very large scale infrastructure development, going and looking and talking to world leaders and understanding what is it that their nation needs, and trying to figure out how we can, bring the world's leading innovators in whatever they are, whether it be this 3D printing for social housing, or agrotech for food security, or energy investment to, help bring renewable energy and lower costs and abundant energy. And then, by the way, that's a really interesting one right now with the Chinese regulation to shut down basically Bitcoin mining has created an incredibly big opportunity. All that mining is leaving China and it's looking for new places to set up. And with that creates the potential for massive investment into new infrastructure in places like El Salvador, right? They have volcanoes
Right.
and the ability to put in place geothermal, energy, to provide the people of El Salvador with low cost, cheap, clean energy, but also as a place for Bitcoin mining, which can create jobs and revenues for the state. I was on the phone with another head of state today having that same conversation. There are a lot of places in the world where renewable energy is potentially available and at large scale and in a way that works for Bitcoin mining. And these countries have known this for 15 years, but they could never find the equity investment. And so I'm talking to a lot of heads of state, and then domestically in the U.S., I talk to legislators on a state and federal level on a regular basis, and I'm very involved in, call it governance, but I haven't left innovation. I'm still very active in the crypto sector, but I'm also investing in the space race, and I'm just a curious mind, and I learn by doing, and so I do all sorts of things. But at the core of the theme, I would say that it's really about governance and where the old and the new meet, right? Because ultimately, we're trying to find a path forward, not a revolutionary one, but an evolutionary one. And to do that, we have to create an all-win sort of scenario where the old and the new can come together. Obviously, the world is changing. Change is a constant in the universe. You can't stop change. The question is, do you catch the wave when it comes, or do you get pummeled by it? And, we want to build bridges to bring the old along, right? To allow us to progress, together societally. And, it's human nature for the establishment, right? Or the incumbent institutions and otherwise, it's human nature to fear that which we don't understand. And we conquer fear with knowledge. And so if we want to address these issues, we have to take the time to connect. And when I talk to members of the House or Senate, what's really been surprising is how few of them actually knew anything about this. And so by having these conversations, by providing this information, the likelihood of us seeing, positive legislation or sensible legislation versus a fear-based decision is impacted. And I think it's important. And I hope that by my running for president, I inspire others to get involved. The future is going to happen to us or with us. And our government, or that system of governance that governs over us, is kind of important. And I was just at the Satoshi Roundtable, and it was really cool to hear from a number of pioneers from our industry. They're like, hey, yeah, maybe I should run for, the state house, or maybe I should run for city council, or maybe I should do this, or I should do that, or maybe I should get involved. Because I do think we have to get involved if we want to see an evolutionary event. There are a lot of us in the industry that, don't see that that's possible. I can tell you, as someone that's in the trenches, this is possible. Remember, we're going through the changing of the guard, over the course of this decade. And for those of us that are in our 40s, or 30s or 50s, these generations are the ones that are going to be assuming, the role next. And, for those that, feel called, I think we really can make a difference, and if you're not a fan of the government as it is, we have the ability to take the government back. I mean, that's how our system works. And so if you're encouraged by this or inspired by it, and you feel like getting involved, certainly reach out to me. There's a lot of us that are choosing to get involved, and we have the means. Just think about this. When Bitcoin hits $100,000, we are a majority of all the world's billionaires. And there's already hundreds of millions of us. We're like a movement or nation without borders, and we're soon going to have a majority of the money. Let's just say we can make a difference. We have the ability to invest in new technologies that are going to facilitate, a positive change in the world. We do have the ability to impact our elections and those who are in leadership and legislation and the laws that exist. But for that to happen, we actually have to rise up to the occasion. We have to get involved. It's not going to happen on its own. It requires, those that are able to make a sacrifice, because, for those that haven't given this any thought, running for president of the United States of America is a dangerous thing to do. It is,
can make enemies.
This is not something you do for, let's say, publicity. Because what you're doing when you do that is you're asking every decision you've ever made in your life to be scrutinized by people in high places, every agency you can think of. And it can cost you your life, your liberty, your reputation, your wealth. I mean, it's probably the highest stakes game there is. And so, this is, something clearly, if you're going to get involved in this type of activity, you have to have a lot of conviction, but the future does favor the bold. Fortune does favor the bold, and courage is my favorite virtue. And it's not the sort of job that any sane person would want, but it's something I've chosen to will, right? And I'm only interested in the jobs that no one else will or can do. And so hopefully, by doing this, we can bring a message that facilitates change at a minimum. Hopefully it can inspire others to get involved. And, I think that we really can make a difference. And from my perspective, it's a moral obligation. I'm also a father, and I'm deeply concerned about our collective future. I mean, you wouldn't probably be in Bitcoin if you thought everything was all good.
Yeah.
The debate is, what do we do now? And that's, subjective to all of us.
Yeah. I mean, we have the knowledge. Now there's the responsibility. And I think people in crypto are kind of uniquely primed to understand that with this level of freedom, let's say financial freedom, comes a lot of responsibility, right? Even from the beginning of learning that you are now in control of your own security. If you want total freedom and privacy, you have to take on a lot more responsibility for your own security and, write down your seed phrase, even simple things like that. But part of that responsibility is that you have this freedom because we've built this participatory democracy, and that you're only going to get out of it what you put in. And that's why all of these crypto communities are so vibrant, is because people are really contributing to them and contributing in the governance and staking node, being node validators and voting on proposals and watching what they believe in grow. So I think that training in governance hopefully can translate to some people being inspired to take a more active role in whatever jurisdiction they happen to live in.
Indeed. It's the responsibility of wealth, I guess, is the thing I would touch on. I don't really view any of the wealth that I have to be mine per se. I mean, yes, I'm in possession of it, but I really view myself more as a custodian, or a steward. I'm a custodian of these things. I clearly can't take them with me at the end of this life. But, it's the question is, what do I do with it? Well, I am in custody, of it. And so I view money really as a form of stored energy, or energy, right? And energy wishes to flow, kind of like water. It's a current, see? And we're just kind of meant to be conductors of it. Hopefully good conductors of it, to keep things moving in a way that it facilitates the change, that we wish to see in the world, because we have an ability to really make a big impact. Obviously, we only have the power to change ourselves, but we have the ability to inspire others and to give resources to those things we wish to empower, right? The things we wish to give power to. And it is a significant responsibility. And so I just wanted to add to that, because I think it's an important point that you raised there. Certainly for a lot of us, maybe not myself, but for the first time that people are coming into, great, substantial financial resources. And I think, as we know, money doesn't always make us better. And I think it's important, if you're coming into substantial financial resources for the first time in your life, to just to be mindful of this, and think about what it means, right? And really ask yourself, what does it mean for you, and what are you going to do with it, and make wise decisions, to preserve the things that you've been fortunate enough to receive, but also ask, kind of, what do you want to do with it, right? You can sit back and just kind of, like the old money of the world, just hoard it and wait it out and live the life forever, which is your right, or you can choose to get involved and to do something, and I clearly have chosen what I've chosen to do, is to do as much as I possibly can with the time that I've been given. This is running for president is not an easy task, and spending time traveling around the world talking to world leaders and legislators and things of that nature prevents me from doing almost everything that I normally would want to do. But that's my choice to serve.
Absolutely. And that, even if you take public office or become a politician, right, you're a public servant, here to serve, your constituency, your fellow man, your fellow countrymen. So yeah, remembering that point, that we are, personally, I believe, we are born to be servants, to each other, and definitely appreciate your ethos there. And here at Mousefelt, we've always kind of had our nonprofit, activities that we're not making any money out of, because we really believe in education. For example, we put a lot of resources behind university programs, inspiring students, working with startups, talking them through ideation phase, and just being a good rallying point around really encouraging anyone to get involved in this space. So I'd like to hear more about your experience running for president, because I think it's just so interesting that you're the curious person that you are, that you would see something as daunting as that as like a learning experience. And I'm sure you did that on purpose as a learning experience, because you talk a lot about your talent being, having vision, and also good storytelling. And I was just wondering if you think that those qualities, before you go into, that experience of the presidential run, do you think that vision or being a good storyteller are things that people kind of innately have, or is that like a talent that can be cultivated? And if it could, how would you advise people to go about cultivating those skills?
So I believe that we can generally learn anything. There are some things that are more innate, that meaning they come more easily. They're more natural. And then there are some things that don't come so easily. And if you work hard at it, you can at least develop some skill at, I think, just about anything. It just might be really hard and take a long time. And I generally encourage people to focus more on the things that come easily, because I think all have a lot of kind of gifts that come easily, and but to each their own. If you want to go pursue the really hard things, go do that. And I do the hard things, but the things that come, call it, more easily for me, call it purpose and passion, I think, are linked. Mm-hmm. And the things that you're typically going to do really well are the things that you're really passionate about, because it doesn't feel like work, right? It just kind of comes easy because you just inherently love doing it. And so that's generally kind of it. I've shown in a lot of my past talks this Japanese concept of ikigai, which is like a Venn diagram of figuring out what you're good at, what the world needs, right? And what you're passionate about and what you can get paid for. I don't think that really matters, because if you are doing something that you love, that the world needs, and that you're good at, or passionate about it, it's going to generally work out for you, and money is a natural byproduct of doing well eventually. And so vision, comes from living, kind of in the future. I'm always right on the, I only really focus on things that have never been done before, and I'm really only looking at things that are, never been done before, and investing in things that are just, starting to work, or where you've got, very early indications of something being viable. And so I've done that for more than half of my life. And so when you live in that space, it's not unusual that, you would develop an ability to kind of have future insight, where you might to some degree be able to, call it see around corners. But it's like Malcolm Gladwell would say, it's like, you've done your 10,000 hours. These things don't just come easily. We're talking about massive investment of time. And then what you look at is, where people have, done it once, okay, it's really interesting. But if they've been on the forefront of innovation and pioneering things that have never been done before over and over and over and over again, those are the people that you start to like, do you have a crystal ball? It's not exactly that. It's more a matter of having a lot of data sets, right? Mm-hmm. When you've got access to, you have an asymmetry of information, and through experience, you know how to process that information. You understand the pattern recognition. It's like you see the world from a 70,000 foot or a space view, and then you start seeing patterns that allow you to predict future outcomes and things of that nature. In terms of storytelling, it's also a different skill set, being able to take complex ideas and distill them down into language that everyone can understand, that's short, clear, concise, and hopefully with the right energy. That's a whole nother practice, and certainly useful if you're going to do a lot of public speaking. I grew up starring in movies as a kid, and so auditioning and speaking is something I learned as a child. And so you can go take some acting classes or public speaking classes if you want to learn how to do it. It is something that can be taught. Elon Musk is doing a pretty good job now, and Elon Musk was not a good public speaker in the past. And that's true of a lot of people. So it can be learned, right? Learning how to present. Now, some of that's going to be more scripted. I'm never really operating from a script. Everything I'm doing is generally not rehearsed or even really thought through. It's just kind of raw and natural. But these are things that I encourage people to do. In terms of back to the presidency itself, though, just to share some of the specifics, in the United States, you've got this thing called ballots, right? And ballot access. And how do you get your name on a ballot? That's actually not so simple. You need to collect tons of signatures, or you have to be part of a political party that has ballot access, which is basically the Democrats and the Republicans, libertarians as well. But to get on the ballot, certainly as an independent candidate, you have to collect generally thousands and thousands of signatures, maybe tens of thousands of signatures. And in the middle of COVID, during lockdowns, that's especially hard because digital signatures didn't count. You had to actually normally go door to door knocking and things of that nature to get signatures from people. And during these COVID lockdowns, that was, let's say, last June, July, August, not exactly an easy thing to do. We got on 16 or 17 ballots, and I could have done a lot more, but that wasn't the intention.
Colorado, right? I remember seeing your name when I went to vote. That was exciting to see.
Yeah, Colorado. We did really, really well in New York, because that's where the campaign headquarters started out in Los Angeles, but they basically outlawed campaigning in Los Angeles County. They deemed politics and elections to be non-essential business, so that you couldn't work. And what that did, it wasn't because of me as a presidential candidate. It made it so the local elections basically were won by all the incumbents. No one could basically run against the incumbents. Kind of sad to see that. I would say that our elections are essential. Um,
Absolutely.
Los Angeles decided it wasn't, conveniently. And so we moved to New York and ran the campaign from there. But we actually campaigned around the country. In Utah County, what was really interesting is when the elections happened in Utah, the first vote cast in the state was a vote cast for me for president using votes or a blockchain solution from a mobile phone that was utilized for veterans and some disabled situation. It wasn't available to everybody, but it was the first time a presidential vote will have ever been cast for anyone and on a blockchain. And also for a moment in time, I think for maybe as much as 12 hours, I had more votes than every other candidate combined.
All on the blockchain app?
Yeah, all of one vote. But yes, it was a blockchain vote. So, I mean, that's a historically, significant thing.
Yeah, very cool.
And when you don't run as part of a political party, you have the opportunity to create a political platform from scratch. But that's not simple. It's a lot of work to actually create an entire political platform. And so that was a wonderful learning experience to really, start to be clear, if you haven't done this in your life, but what is your belief system? What do you stand for? Because once you know what you stand for, it's very hard for anyone to manipulate you, right? To deceive you, or you can have conversations and we can agree to disagree about things, but you know where you stand, and so many Americans are basically manipulated by the media and otherwise because they're not firm in their beliefs, right? They don't really know what they stand for. And I'd say that's always a good thing for all of us to be reminded of. Other things that were, I was very involved in dealing with government back in like 2013 and 14 and 15. And as I said, I only want to do jobs no one else will or can. By that time, we had effectively basically distributed all the power of the Bitcoin Foundation. And so I'm chairman of the Bitcoin Foundation, but we distributed all of that authority to MIT and to Bitcoin Core and to allowing other trade associations like the Digital Chamber of Commerce and others to, we didn't think the Bitcoin Foundation should maintain centralized authority, having been kind of the first institution in our space. It had a role in the beginning, but then, in the spirit of decentralization, it needed to be spread out. And so by 2015, I kind of thought my job was done and that there were lots of people out there talking to governments. One of the things I learned in campaigning around the country and talking to state legislators is that none of them had ever talked to anyone about Bitcoin. No one had ever talked to them about blockchain technology. And I was like, huh? No one. And I kept seeing the same thing over and over and over and over again. And that's because most of the work that had been done at a trade level was happening just at the federal level in Washington, D.C. And so that's part of the reason I'm doing this. As I campaigned, I learned that, whoa, we got to actually go engage. Because I actually think that legislation as it relates to our industry should happen at a state level. It's been my recommendation to our federal legislators to do nothing. Let's take the cannabis approach, right? Allow states to create different forms of legislation, to try different flavors. Because if the federal government, is the one to do it first, typically your lobbyists get, heavily involved, which means your incumbent industry and a lot of things and if our federal government gets this wrong, it could have a really big negative, well, it could be catastrophic to the United States and to us as Americans. And so I'd much rather see the states experiment with various forms of legislation. If one state screws up, we'll survive. But if the federal government screws up, we're living through the fourth industrial revolution. Like this is no joke. This is a high stakes game. And if our government messes this up, it could have a catastrophic impact on our country, right? And I'd like to see our country where we're historically the capital of innovation. We still are in many respects, but I'd like to see that innovation come from here. And we haven't had a very good track record as it relates to this industry, right? A lot of the best and brightest entrepreneurs and innovators in America have been moving to other parts of the world. And certainly with everything that China has done here, I think this is a great thing for America. It's created another opportunity for us to do things right. And if we do, it could, I think, lead to great things. And so that's why I'm doing this. These are things I learned on the campaign trail. And then I haven't stopped. I've stayed involved in elections now around the country. And I'm going from election cycle to election cycle and, behind the scenes, becoming a political force.
Is this you supporting candidates that you believe, share your values or will ultimately help America compete in this industrial revolution, or implement some of the changes or innovation that you think are most important?
Yes, and yes. And I don't mean, I go deep now. I mean, in the New York City elections, I assembled a very big team and was very, very involved, not just as someone making a political campaign donation, but actually spending time with the candidates and informing why this matters. I mean, the next mayor of New York City, the most likely next mayor is the one that just won the Democratic primaries, Eric Adams. Eric Adams on election night announced that, he's going to make New York City the Bitcoin capital of the world, and that New York City is embracing, innovation. I imagine you can guess where that came from.
Well, that's great. So on the, level of local jurisdictions, state representatives, senators, kind of all the way down.
Yeah, I mean, it's and the job is so daunting, and it's so big that it's way beyond me. And again, for those that want to get involved, and we're doing this not just domestically. Again, I've got 30 countries, heads of state that are all ears. They're ready to hear about solutions, innovative things that can improve the lives of their people and improve their nations. Technology is changing the world rapidly, and everybody sees it, right? There's 4.5 billion people on the planet that are on or underbanked, right? This is a tool for financial inclusion. I mean, there's so many things that we can do. And if you're at the forefront of innovation and have the cycles and want to get involved, for El Salvador, I had open invites. I mean, I was telling people on Clubhouse, if you want to be a part of this, let me know, into the different crypto, chats that I'm involved in. This was a Bitcoin only delegation, meaning we were there to only talk about things related to Bitcoin. And that's because the government of El Salvador, the president, had passed a Bitcoin law for legal tender. And so I didn't want that trip to be a distraction around anything other than Bitcoin and Bitcoin related stuff, which is energy, right? And things of that nature, education, Bitcoin ATMs, Bitcoin wallets. And we were able to do that. But, innovators on the forefront of change, we've got a lot of tools in our tool belt to solve big problems and solve them fast. And so, in the spirit of transparency, in the spirit of, inclusion, right? I always just want to let the world know, you're invited.
Absolutely. For, maybe like a college student who's active in their college Democrats or college Republicans club, but also have an interest in crypto and blockchain and really feel like they could or have the confidence that they could have productive conversations with their local representatives. Any tips on how to get started, or just how to start having those conversations with people that maybe they don't know how to approach? Or is it just writing letters to your senator, or what would you say to them?
Well, I mean, the first thing is before you engage in conversations with people, learn to know first. Make sure you know what you're talking about, because you can, there's the law of unintended consequences. You can cause harm unknowingly. Don't present yourself as an expert if you're not one.
Right.
So first and foremost is learn to know. Now, if you know what you're talking about, if you've done the work, right, then there's a lot of ways to connect. And at the presidential level, sure, that's the most visible and probably influential office in the U.S. But at the ground level, right, at the local level is really where things really happen, right? And so there's so much that you can do at a local level with your, city councils and your local mayors, and there's a lot of things that happen at that level. And so depending upon where you are in this process, I would say start local is probably the best place to begin your journey. Dropping into the presidential race probably is not the best advice. I wouldn't give it to anyone else. I'm sufficiently I don't know. I wouldn't advise doing it the way that I did it, but as you wish. I'd recommend starting small, crawl before you walk, walk before you run. But this is just the way that I've done things my entire life. And so, that's how it starts, and reach out. And what you'll typically find is that your local governments are much more, they're much more interested in hearing from you than you realize. Most of them are genuinely interested in serving the people. Don't hate the player, hate the game. The problem is more a problem of a systemic design problem and how the system, functions. Our government is mostly comprised of people that want to be public servants. It's a systemic issue. And so if you have information that can help inform them to make better decisions, they genuinely want to hear it. The problem is most people don't show up. The issue is they don't know. And so for those that are curious, definitely go do it. And what you're going to learn is in the same way that, and before you're educating government, I'd start with family and friends and things of that nature, and get your, learn how to be a good teacher. And again, know what you're talking about before probably engaging with government. But get engaged, get involved. They're generally available and interested to talk to you if you can provide valuable insight and information. And show up. There's all sorts of public stuff. It's learning how our government works is something I encourage certainly all young people to do. For those of us that maybe are just not interested and a little older, then okay, whatever. But knowing how our system of governance works, certainly for those in college, you're the generation that's going to follow us. And the more you understand how things work and understand governance, the better suited you'll be when your time comes to lead, right? And I don't mean to rule, but to lead by example and to serve. This is definitely something that I think will serve you well, later in life, and it will serve your country, your community, your states in the immediate term. Because I can tell you, most of our elected officials and civil servants are massively underinformed.
For sure. I think that I am always excited to encourage students to just learn by teaching too, maybe before they get to the point where they're talking to legislators or anything, but teach your friends, start a club on your campus, teach your family about crypto, start a meetup. I think there's so much interest now in learning the fundamentals that you can get a lot of experience even with that public speaking stuff, crafting presentations for people and building little communities wherever you are. And that's going to give you immeasurable skills to enter this industry as well. And a lot of the people that we interview on this conference series got their start just writing what they thought about Bitcoin on a blog. And so, yeah, just encourage people to get involved any way they can. So talked about your presidential run. What are some of the other things that you're working on? Well, I have a question. What is the most bleeding edge technology that you are exploring or investing in right now, that, in your opinion?
Well, space and space technologies, are I'd say pretty bleeding edge. It's not a primary area of focus, but it's one. I also invest in healthcare, but specifically in the area of medicines like psychedelic medicine. So I'm an investor in Atai and other companies that are looking to solve medical issues like PTSD, mental health issues, and very interesting stuff. I donate a lot of money to charity in these areas, specifically through an organization called MAPS, or the Multidisciplinary Association of Psychoactive Studies, which has done all the MDMA research and it's FDA and all this sort of stuff. So that's, I'd say, kind of bleeding edge. Where else? Some aerial telecommunication stuff, like, drone-like planes that can stay in the air for weeks or months to provide telecommunications. And we do a lot of innovative stuff outside of blockchain. Obviously, I continue to invest in that area. And then the infrastructure stuff is always, like, interesting. I mean, the craziest one that just came out is I'm interested in maritime law, and I'm interested in governance and how do the oceans work, right? And so, most people would spend a while studying it, or hanging out in communities, and I, on the other hand, did something a little different. I found out that this cruise ship, known as the Funchal, Funchal, which is the capital of Madeira, a Portuguese island off the coast of Africa, that this ship that was built in 1961 for the president of Portugal, it's like the Air Force One of ships at the time. Then it became the King of Portugal's ship in 1972. So it went from being the presidential to the royal, ship that ultimately delivered the king's body, or the emperor of Brazil, to be buried. This national treasure to the Portuguese people and government, because of the COVID lockdowns, was about to get sold at auction. And because no one could access the country or inspect it, only scrappers were interested in it. They were going to buy it and melt it down for scrap. I found out that this was happening, and I swooped in to buy it, having no idea what I was doing. Yeah. But wanting to protect a national treasure, and what an interesting way to learn the maritime game.
Is there your first cruise ship you've ever bought?
Yeah, this was it. Yeah, and I bought a second one. So I have two of the 5 largest private vessels in the world right now. And so, yeah, it's like, okay, now what do you do? The Portuguese government, when they found out this thing had been saved, was, they were very happy, and they're like, what are you going to do with it? I'm like, well, we got a couple of ideas. One is, this ship is a national treasure in Portugal. I mean, famous. Like, everybody knows about this boat. Certainly, it's over the age of 40. And so it's like, well, I remember the Queen Mary, for those of you that have ever been to Long Beach or Los Angeles. I'm like, well, maybe we could, like, turn it into a hotel just permanently parked in Portugal, and make it kind of into a museum with amenities and all this sort of stuff. And maybe we can make it into a nice hotel, a 5-star hotel, but have the inner rooms that are low cost, like almost hostel-like for everyone, up to the presidential suite. So it's there as a national treasure, but available to everyone. Yeah. And the Portuguese government was like, oh, that's amazing. Yes. And so we're now working on a program to build a very large marina, with a ferry that is connected directly to the new airport that runs through this, for mega yachts. And it's now turned into a massive infrastructure development, well over €100 million investment into Portugal. And with that, a golden visa program. Actually, this is, I think, a useful thing for the crypto community, not as much the Americans. But in America, we have this thing called EB-5, where people invest to get access to residency or green cards in the US. In Europe, there's a program called the Golden Visa, and Portugal's Golden Visa program is the main program right now. They've taken in about 6 billion euros of investment into Portugal through this program. And so if you invest 350,000 euros into a qualified or eligible project, you get a Schengen visa. So you get residency and eventually after about 7 years, a Portuguese passport if you want it. But by investing in a project like this, you get access to a Schengen or European, basically, travel. And so for people that are in India or Eastern Europe or the Middle East or Africa, anyone in crypto, this could be a very useful thing. And Portugal has zero taxes on crypto sales. So if you need a residency that has optimal tax treatment, Portugal is a really good one right now. I mean, Dubai is similar, but Portugal is something for the international folks or your friends that are international to be aware of. And so you can, so that's like a kind of a just wild out there sort of thing. The second cruise ship is going to run from that marina to Madeira and the Azores. And so I'm now might need a third ship. And so I'm learning that industry. We're also building. It looks like I'll end up building a couple more marinas, taking over and picking up airports. Learning. I love learning all this stuff, and certainly for a presidential candidate, right? For someone that's involved in public service, most of our politicians are talking about things that they've never done. Right?
Oh, how many times have you heard the word infrastructure in politics the last few months with what's going on in the Capitol Hill?
Well, but not that it's clear when I'll be running next, but let's just say I'll have built ports around the world, airports, power plants, massive food security. It's like when we talk about infrastructure, I'll be like, yeah, I've done all that. And here's my track record. Here's the country. Here's the projects. It's I only really want to speak positively in life. Again, don't hate the player, hate the game. But I am a big fan of what our founding fathers set out to do, which is, we're not supposed to be career politicians. And I'm going back into our founding fathers. For those of us that have, through merit, become very talented, in particular areas, running for office was an act of service. You went and did a tour of duty because you were able to serve your country well. It was not a career at the time. And I think that we need more people that are, done well enough in the things that they do to step out of, their lives for a while to do that. And at great personal expense, great opportunity cost. I mean, there's a lot of things that I could do and do very well for myself, but I'm choosing. And even a lot of these things that I'm doing, right? I'm doing this to get an education in the fields that I think are going to be relevant to our collective future in advance of doing it with, call it government money. I'm paying tuition and developing the skills and the knowledge in these fields on my own dime so that it's not one day, God willing, done on your dime. I'm making sure that I've got the prerequisite qualifications in advance. And so that's what a lot of this is, about whatever happens, right? I'm not attached to the outcome. I'm happy if all this ever ends up being is, putting good ideas forward and hopefully, being in a position that those ideas are more likely to be implemented, because of all of this.
Well, you've certainly been able to build a platform for yourself around this and probably, spark a lot more conversations with, like you said, 30 plus heads of state all over the world who, saw your courageous, bold move of running for your president of the United States and just how many conversations that has opened for you. And that's a lot on its own, right? Just being able to put these good ideas out there. Given that you are investing in space and some of the things recently in the news, I have to ask you some of your thoughts about Recent SpaceX, you know, Bezos, what's going on with these companies and the fact that they may or may not hold Bitcoin or start accepting Bitcoin payments. What do you think about all that?
Well, Bezos, we know a lot less, right, about what he's really doing there. There's been recent news that they might be doing something. They put out a job opening, but I wouldn't call that concrete anything yet. We in the crypto community sometimes get really excited about very little things that may not actually materialize into anything. Oh, Amazon, and we all get excited and markets move. But on the other hand, Elon Musk, right, has really done something. In the case of Tesla, and in the beginning, something that was really positive, for the industry. And then he, became Mr. Dogfather, or Doge Father, and kind of did all of that, and then kind of turned negative on Bitcoin and criticizing us for our energy, and now kind of trying to work his way back into the community. I'd say that overall, what Elon's done here is a good thing. I think it created a lot of awareness for the industry as a whole, and I'm not sure about what he's done with Dogecoin. I think I've always found the Doge coin and community awesome. It's a cool community, and perhaps Doge backward is God. Maybe this was some sort of like interesting joke. I do think that it has the potential, if it doesn't perform, to cause harm to a lot of people. And so I don't know what his strategy is long term to evolve Doge into something that can be long term successful to justify the market cap that it currently has. And so I hope he knows what he's doing, and I hope he's learned something from this. Now, the part I kind of confuses me is the comments about mining and its impact on the environment. I mean, Tesla's cars run on electricity that comes from power plants that are mostly fossil fuels. So you might be driving electric cars, but they're almost entirely powered by, or largely powered by fossil fuel. Is he making an argument that we should go back to horse and carriage? It seems like an argument I don't quite understand. And if, as someone that knows a bit more about Bitcoin mining, the industry looks like a majority of it does already come from renewable energy, because renewable energy is cheap energy. Hydroelectricity is where a lot of this comes from. Geothermal is quite popular. Solar, not so much, but that's starting to come online right now. And so we're already well on our way. And my view of this is that Satoshi's second gift is going to be, so civilization used to power its lamps or lanterns with whale fat or blubber. And if we as civilization expanded, had kept doing that, there'd be no whales left. And so because of civilization's need for more power or energy, that's what drove us eventually to fossil fuels. And so compute in all of its forms, whether it be data centers, AI, mining, right? Compute, broadly speaking, is advancing civilization to a point where I believe it will be responsible for the inventing and the investment to actually upgrade our energy infrastructure globally. So I have a different view. My view is that Bitcoin and compute generally, and Bitcoin probably as much as any right now, and certainly with what China has done, is going to be responsible for helping to upgrade the world's energy grid. I think that when we look back, this will be, potentially the tip of the spear that accelerated everything. And so I don't share Elon's view on this sector, and we're not going backwards, right? We're going forward. And how do we go forward as mindfully as possible? And so I'm spending a lot of time in that sector, helping to finance and and find places where we can upgrade the energy infrastructure to create a lower cost, abundant world of clean energy. And I can tell you on the front line, I can't share everything happening, but it's happening. And so I think when we look back in the future, those of us pushing this forward, I think, are going to be on the right side of history. But again, it's normally I wouldn't even talk about it. So I hope Elon has learned something. But the only thing that confuses me is between Tesla and Solar City, like, you're too smart not to know this. Like, how could you possibly have gotten this one wrong? It's like, it doesn't make any sense to me, because to his credit, look at the extraordinary things that he's done. I just don't understand how he didn't already know this. And so I'm a little confused by it, but I continue to be an Elon Musk fan, and hope he's learned something. And I hope he's got a good plan for Dogecoin.
Absolutely. Thanks for your thoughts on that. Well, just to round out this segment, thank you so much for joining us. It's 10th anniversary event. We looked back kind of on your last year and kind of the things that have been happening in the crypto space. Maybe take us out with some of you just spoke really eloquently on what you see the future of, this computing and the necessity for cleaner energy, and that will drive innovation. Any other things that you'd like to say about what you think is going to happen? We've been doing this a little over a year. COVID was a hard year. What do you see for the future of Bitcoin or blockchain and cryptocurrencies in the next year?
I mean, all good things. We're basically where the internet was in 1997. This is where things start to get really interesting. We've reached critical mass, right? This is now the main event. This is like prime time moment. It starts with the early developers and the earliest adopters, and then academia, then the venture capitalists, right? Then the big tech, and then the financial services and banks, and now government. I mean, we've gone full spectrum. All the world's institutions are now kind of on board, and the numbers of people, and things can move fast now. So this is when it gets most interesting. Definitely encourage popcorn, but onshore, exactly in what order this all goes, right? El Salvador, I can tell you, there are a lot of countries interested in following suit and doing even more, right? Does this turn into a chain reaction where, I'm clearly trying to turn this into a blockchain reaction where other nations follow suit rapidly? How does this go on September 7th when it goes live? And by the way, certainly what happens in El Salvador is going to matter a lot, because a lot of countries are going to look to El Salvador and say, how is it working? And so, for anyone that wants to get involved, it matters a lot. Get on a plane, come check it out. And it's as basic as educating people, helping people on board. And this is happening so fast, it's unbelievable. And so I care a great deal about what happens there, because if things, and it doesn't have to go perfectly, but if things work, we could see a lot of other countries follow suit, which I think matters a lot. Bitcoin obviously benefits greatly from that. I'm very bullish. Despite all the challenges that exist in the world, I remain eternally optimistic. I have so much faith in us. I believe in us, and it's because of those of us, that are on the front lines. We see a problem and we're like, hey, there's a solution. We can fix this. And I'm just to all of you, on the forefront of in whatever role you're playing. We really can do this. We can make a difference. And, I'm just so grateful to be able to speak to you. I appreciate the opportunity to present, and thank you all for all you do.
Thank you so much. And thank you for everyone for tuning in to our 10th anniversary edition of ReImagine 2020. We've been speaking with Brock Pierce, former U.S. presidential candidate, maybe future U.S. presidential candidate. And like I said, a man who needs no introduction, really. Please check out his previous interview with ReImagine on our YouTube channel and stay tuned for more. Thanks again, Brock.
Thank you.